Across the vast darkness of the galaxy, the Zarkan Empire was known as the most feared power ever seen. Their fleets controlled thousands of star systems. Entire civilizations had surrendered the moment their massive warships appeared in the sky. The Empire believed no one could challenge them. Especially not humans. In the grand halls of the Galactic Council, many alien leaders often spoke about Earth. Humans were new to the galaxy. Their technology was strange and different. Their ships looked smaller than the giant war machines built by older civilizations. To most aliens, humans looked weak. And the Zarkan Empire believed the same thing. So when their enormous invasion fleet finally arrived near the Sol system, the commanders of the Empire expected an easy victory. Thousands of Zarkan warships slowly surrounded the outer edge of the human star system. Huge black destroyers floated beside massive carriers. Rows of glowing weapons lit the darkness of space like silent lightning waiting to strike. Inside the command bridge of the flagship Oblivion Crown, Grand Admiral Xiron watched the human defenses on a giant holographic screen. The officers around him began to smile. Only a few human ships were visible. Small ships. Simple designs. Nothing compared to the monstrous Zarkan battle cruisers. One officer laughed quietly. Is this really the defense of Earth? Another officer leaned closer to the display and shook his head. I expected more from the species everyone talks about. Several others joined the laughter. Grand Admiral Xiron did not laugh loudly, but a small smirk appeared on his face. So this is humanity, he said calmly. The species the Council claims could become dangerous one day. He looked at the screen again. Only 20 human ships guarded the system. 20. Against thousands. This battle will end quickly, one officer said confidently. But something strange happened. The human ships did not prepare to attack. They did not retreat either. Instead, they slowly moved apart, creating an empty path through the middle of their formation. The Zarkan officers stopped laughing. Why are they moving? One asked. Another officer checked the sensors. Unknown movement detected behind the human fleet. Grand Admiral Xiron narrowed his eyes. Magnify the area. The holographic screen zoomed in. At first, nothing was visible. Then the sensors detected something approaching from deep space. A ship. Just one. It moved slowly toward the battlefield. Compared to the giant Zarkan warships, it looked tiny. The sensor officer frowned while studying the readings. Admiral, our scanners cannot identify the vessel. What do you mean? Xiron asked. There is no energy signature. Another officer looked shocked. That is impossible. Every ship has an energy signature. The mysterious craft kept moving forward. Its silver surface reflected the distant stars like a mirror. The shape was smooth and unfamiliar, almost beautiful in a strange way. No weapons were visible. No engines could be detected. The ship simply existed. The officers looked at each other. Then someone began laughing again. So this is the famous human secret weapon, he joked. A single ship? The command bridge filled with laughter once more. Grand Admiral Xiron crossed his arms. Perhaps humans believe this will scare us. He turned to the weapons officer. Destroy it. Hundreds of plasma cannons fired at once. Blazing beams of energy rushed toward the strange craft. For a moment, the Zarkan officers waited for the explosion. But the explosion never came. Instead, the beams vanished. They simply disappeared before reaching the ship. The laughter stopped immediately. The sensor alarms suddenly screamed across the bridge. Unknown energy spike detected. Energy levels rising rapidly. Grand Admiral Xiron stepped forward in disbelief. The small silver craft slowly stopped in the center of the battlefield. Then every Zarkan communication channel activated at the same time. A calm human voice spoke. You laughed at human ships. The command bridge fell completely silent. The voice continued, cold and steady. Now you will learn why the most dangerous human ships are the ones no one knows about. The strange craft began glowing with bright blue light. Energy readings on every Zarkan ship exploded with warnings. Power levels increasing. Increasing again. Grand Admiral Zyron shouted in panic. All ships fire. Destroy it now. Thousands of weapons fired together. But the mysterious ship released a single pulse of light. And in the next second, the first line of Zarkan warships vanished from existence. No explosion. No debris. They were simply gone. For the first time in centuries, silence filled the Zarkan command bridge. Because the Empire had just realized something terrifying. The humans had brought a ship the galaxy had never seen before. And it had just erased an entire fleet formation with one attack. Silence spread across the Zarkan command bridge. Moments earlier the officers had been laughing at the small human fleet. Now none of them spoke. The giant holographic screen showed empty space where 50 Zarkan warships had existed seconds ago. They were gone. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Erased. Grand Admiral Zyron stared at the display, unable to believe what he had just witnessed. His empire had fought countless wars across the galaxy, but never had an entire formation disappeared without even leaving wreckage behind. What happened to them? One officer whispered. The sensor chief was frantically scanning the battlefield. No debris detected. No radiation. No energy remains. His voice trembled. It is as if the ships never existed. A cold feeling spread through the command bridge. Outside, thousands of Zarkan warships held their positions around the mysterious silver craft. The small ship floated silently in the middle of the battlefield like a calm predator surrounded by confused prey. Grand Admiral Zyron forced himself to stay calm. Scan the vessel again, he ordered. The sensors tried once more. But the results made even less sense. Still no engine signature. No weapon systems detected. No shield energy. Another officer looked at the numbers in shock. That is impossible. Something just erased 50 warships. The strange craft remained completely still. Then the human voice returned to the communication channels. You still do not understand what you are facing. Several Zarkan officers quickly attempted to trace the signal. But the communication systems could not find its origin. The voice was coming from everywhere at once. Grand Admiral Zyron stepped closer to the console. Identify yourself, he demanded. For a moment, there was no response. Then the calm voice answered. You may call this vessel unknown. The name confused the officers. What kind of ship is that? One muttered. The voice continued. It is the first ship built by humanity for a war we hoped would never come. The Zarkan officers exchanged uneasy looks. Your scanners cannot understand this vessel because it does not use the technology you know. Grand Admiral Zyron clenched his fists. Enough of this, he said angrily. He turned to his fleet commanders. Launched the second attack wave. Thousands of Zarkan fighters rushed forward from their carriers. Swarms of small attack ships filled space as they surrounded the mysterious craft. From a distance it looked like a storm closing around a single star. Fire everything, Zyron ordered. Missiles, plasma cannons, and ion beams erupted across space. The attack struck the glowing blue field around the human vessel. But the weapons simply dissolved into light. Every blast disappeared before touching the hull. The Zarkan pilot stared in disbelief. Inside the flagship, the sensor officer shouted. The energy field is absorbing everything. Grand Admiral Zyron felt a drop of fear in his chest. The human voice spoke again. You came here believing humans were weak. The silver ship slowly rotated, as if calmly studying the enormous Zarkan fleet. You saw our small fleets and thought that was all we had. The glowing field around the vessel grew brighter. But humans have always prepared for the worst. Suddenly the ship released another pulse. This time the light spread farther across the battlefield. Hundreds of Zarkan fighters vanished instantly. Entire attack formations disappeared from space. The remaining pilots screamed in panic as their scanners went dark. Back on the command bridge, alarms blared everywhere. 300 fighters lost. 5 cruisers gone. Energy wave expanding. Grand Admiral Zyron slammed his hand onto the console. How can one ship do this? The sensor chief looked terrified. Admiral, the energy readings are still increasing. The officers stared at the screen. The small silver craft now shined like a growing star. But the most frightening thing was what the long-range sensors had just detected. More signals were appearing at the edge of the system. Not one. Not 2. Hundreds. The sensor officer swallowed slowly. Admiral, new ships entering the system. Human ships. The command bridge turned silent again. Grand Admiral Zyron looked at the screen. Dozens of identical silver vessels were emerging from deep space. Each one looked exactly like the first ship. And every single one carried the same impossible power. The calm human voice spoke once more. You laughed at one human ship. A pause followed. Then the voice finished. Now imagine what happens when the rest arrive. Fear slowly spread through the Zarkan command bridge. For the first time in the long history of the Empire, the officers of the mighty Zarkan fleet did not know what to do. Their sensors were now focused on the edge of the Sol system, where the new signals had appeared. One signal had already destroyed dozens of their warships. Now hundreds more were arriving. The sensor officer's voice shook as he read the data. New contacts confirmed, 200 ships entering the system. The holographic screen expanded, showing the distant edge of space. Small flashes of blue light appeared one by one. Then the shapes of ships slowly formed out of the darkness. Every officer on the bridge leaned forward. They looked exactly like the first ship. Smooth silver hulls. No visible engines. No weapon systems. And no detectable energy signature. The sensor officer wiped sweat from his forehead. Admiral, our scanners still cannot read them. Grand Admiral Zyron stared at the display, his confident expression now gone. How can an entire fleet hide its energy signatures? He asked quietly. No one had an answer. Outside the flagship, the Zarkan warships began moving nervously into defensive formation. The massive fleet that once looked unstoppable now seemed uncertain. Thousands of alien soldiers watched the approaching human vessels with growing fear. The first silver craft still floated in the center of the battlefield. It had not moved since its last attack. It simply waited. Then the human voice returned to the communication channel. You see them now. The voice sounded calm, almost emotionless. These ships were never meant to be seen by the galaxy. On the command bridge, several officers quickly tried to locate the origin of the signal again. But once more, they failed. The voice was everywhere. Grand Admiral Zyron stepped closer to the console. What are these ships? He demanded. For a moment, the voice did not respond. Then it finally spoke. Long ago, humanity studied the wars of the galaxy. Images suddenly appeared on the Zarkan screens. Historical battles. Destroyed planets. Burning star systems. The voice continued. We learned something very important. The images showed powerful empires rising and falling across centuries. Every empire believes it will rule forever. The officers watched silently. But eventually, someone stronger always appears. The Silver Fleet continued moving closer to the battlefield. Now the Zarkan ships could see them clearly. Hundreds of identical vessels forming a perfect line across space. The human voice continued. So humanity prepared. New images appeared on the screens. Huge construction stations hidden in deep space. Secret shipyards floating inside dark nebula clouds. Massive structures building the strange silver vessels. We built ships that could fight enemies far stronger than us. The Zarkan officers stared in disbelief. Ships designed to survive against impossible odds. The Silver Fleet finally stopped. Now they surrounded the entire battlefield. Grand Admiral Xiron felt something he had not felt in decades. Doubt. You built an entire secret fleet, he said slowly. Yes, the voice replied. But the fleet was never meant for conquest. The energy around the silver ships began glowing again. Hundreds of blue lights appeared across the battlefield. It was meant for survival. Suddenly the Zarkan sensors exploded with warnings. Massive energy surge detected. Power levels rising across multiple ships. The Silver Fleet was activating. One ship had already erased part of the Zarkan armada. Now 200 more were preparing to fire. Grand Admiral Xiron realized the terrible truth. The Empire had not come to conquer a weak civilization. They had awakened something far more dangerous. He quickly turned to his officers. All ships prepare defensive shields. But the sensor officer suddenly gasped. Admiral, there is more. Xiron looked back at the screen. Beyond the Silver Fleet, new signals were appearing again. Hundreds more. Then thousands. Hidden human fleets emerging from the darkness of deep space. The voice spoke one final time. You thought humanity had only 20 ships. A pause followed. Then the voice finished with quiet certainty. But you were only looking at the ones we allowed you to see. Panic slowly spread across the Zarkan command bridge. The giant holographic display now showed a battlefield that looked completely different from just minutes earlier. When the Empire first arrived, the Zarkan fleet had filled the entire system like an unstoppable wall of warships. Now they were surrounded. Hundreds of strange silver ships floated calmly around them. And beyond those ships, thousands of new human signals were still appearing on long-range sensors. Grand Admiral Xiron felt the cold weight of the situation pressing on his mind. For the first time in his long career, the Zarkan fleet was no longer the most powerful force in the battlefield. They were trapped. Report the number of human vessels, Xiron ordered. The sensor officer swallowed before answering. Over 2,000 confirmed, and more are still arriving. A deep silence filled the bridge. One officer whispered, this was never supposed to happen. The Zarkan Empire had conquered countless civilizations. Their fleets had crushed powerful enemies before. But never had they faced a force that appeared from nowhere with such terrifying technology. Outside the flagship, the Zarkan fleet began activating every defensive system they had. Giant shield barriers flickered to life around thousands of warships. Massive cannons rotated toward the human vessels surrounding them. But the silver ships did not move. They simply floated in place like silent watchers. Then the human voice returned to the communication channel. You finally understand. Grand Admiral Xiron clenched his fists. You hid this fleet from the galaxy, he said. Yes. Why? For a moment, there was only silence. Then the voice answered calmly. Because humans learned something important. The silver ships began glowing again with the same blue energy that had erased the earlier Zarkan formation. We learned that the galaxy respects only power. The Zarkan sensor alarms began screaming again. Energy surge across the entire human fleet. Power levels rising rapidly. The officers looked at the screen in horror. Every silver ship was charging its weapon. Thousands of glowing lights appeared across space. Grand Admiral Xiron shouted orders. All ships fire. Destroy them before they attack. The Zarkan fleet unleashed everything. Thousands of cannons fired at once. Missiles streaked across space. Entire waves of energy weapons flooded toward the human ships. But the attacks did nothing. The blue fields around the silver vessels absorbed the explosions like falling rain. The human ships did not even shake. Then the calm voice spoke again. This is the last warning the Zarkan Empire will ever receive. The Silver Fleet moved for the first time. Not quickly. Not aggressively. Just slowly shifting positions around the trapped Zarkan armada. Like hunters closing a circle around their prey. Leave the Sol system now, the voice continued. Or this fleet will cease to exist. Grand Admiral Xiron looked around the bridge. Some officers were waiting for his order to retreat. But pride burned inside him. The Zarkan Empire had never retreated from any battlefield. Impossible, he said quietly. He turned toward the weapons officer. Prepare the main cannons. The officer hesitated. Admiral, if those ships fire. Fire. The command echoed across the fleet. The largest weapons of the Zarkan Empire unleashed their full power. A massive storm of energy rushed toward the Silver Fleet. For a moment the battlefield turned white with light. Then the human ships responded. Thousands of blue pulses exploded outward from the silver vessels. The energy wave spread across space like a silent ocean. And when it touched the Zarkan fleet, ships began disappearing. First dozens. Then hundreds. Entire formations vanished instantly. No explosions. No debris. Just empty space where warships had once existed. Inside the command bridge, officers screamed as the fleet numbers collapsed. Cruiser division gone. Carrier group destroyed. 200 ships lost. The massive Zarkan armada was falling apart in seconds. Grand Admiral Xiron stared at the screen in disbelief. The Empire's greatest fleet was being erased from existence. The silver ships moved closer. Another wave of blue light began building around them. And the Zarkan officers finally understood something terrifying. Humanity had not hidden their fleet out of fear. They had hidden it out of patience. And now the Empire was witnessing the moment humanity finally decided to use it. The battlefield had become silent. Where thousands of Zarkan warships once filled space, there were now only small scattered groups of survivors. The proud fleet of the Empire had been reduced to a few frightened vessels drifting among empty stars. The giant holographic display on the command bridge showed a terrible truth. Almost 80% of the Zarkan fleet had vanished. No wreckage floated in space. No burning debris. The ships were simply gone, erased by the strange power of the human fleet. Grand Admiral Xiron stood motionless at the center of the bridge. His officers no longer spoke. Some stared at the screen in disbelief. Others quietly watched the silver ships surrounding them. The mysterious human vessels had stopped firing. They simply floated in space, calm and silent. But their presence alone was terrifying. The censor officer slowly spoke. Admiral, the human fleet has stopped attacking. Xiron looked at the display again. Hundreds of silver ships surrounded the few remaining Zarkan vessels like an endless wall. Their blue energy fields glowed softly, ready to strike again at any moment. Then the familiar calm human voice returned to the communication channels. The battle is over. The words echoed across every surviving Zarkan ship. Grand Admiral Xiron finally spoke. You could destroy the rest of our fleet, he said slowly. Yes. Then why haven't you? For a moment, there was silence across the battlefield. Then the voice answered. Because humans do not fight wars to prove power. The silver ships slowly moved closer, tightening the circle around the damaged Zarkan fleet. We fight wars to end them. Several Zarkan officers exchanged uneasy looks. For the first time, the humans sounded less like enemies and more like judges. The voice continued. Your empire attacked Earth believing humans were weak. The holographic display suddenly changed. Now it showed hundreds of distant signals spreading across the galaxy. Human fleets. Hidden in deep space. Stationed around important star systems. Thousands of ships the galaxy had never seen before. You believed our small fleets were everything we had. Grand Admiral Xiron felt his heart sink. The truth was now clear. Humanity had never been weak. They had simply been quiet. The voice spoke again. Humans watched the wars of the galaxy for centuries. Images appeared on the screens across every Zarkan ship. Planets burning. Civilizations collapsing. Empires destroying each other for power. We saw what endless war does to the galaxy. The images disappeared. Then the display returned to the silver fleet surrounding the Zarkan survivors. So we prepared. Grand Admiral Xiron slowly lowered his head. The Empire had not discovered humanity's weakness. They had discovered humanity's restraint. The voice gave its final message. This battle will be remembered across the galaxy. The silver ships began to move away, slowly opening a path through their formation. You will leave the Sol system. The Zarkan officers watched carefully. None of the human ships fired. None of them chased the retreating vessels. But their power was clear. And you will tell every empire what happened here. Grand Admiral Xiron looked at the empty battlefield one last time. The Zarkan fleet had arrived believing they would conquer Earth. Instead, they had witnessed something the galaxy had never truly understood. Humanity was not the loudest civilization. Not the oldest. Not the largest. But they were something far more dangerous. They were the civilization that prepared for threats long before they appeared. Xiron gave the final order. All remaining ships, retreat. The surviving Zarkan vessels slowly turned away from the Sol system and began their long journey home. Behind them, the silent Silver Fleet watched. And across the galaxy, rumors of the battle began spreading. For the first time in history, every empire heard the same message. Humanity had never tried to rule the galaxy. But now everyone understood something important. If humanity ever decided to, no one could stop them.